where read is in a larger landscape. And then we're going to talk about why read. But first off, I'm going to talk about my toothpaste because it's so critically important. So why do I start off by talking about my toothpaste? So the first time I gave this presentation, which is like five years ago, it was in the morning and I looked at my sink and I said, this is perfect. And if you look at this, you'll see my toothpaste, which is Crest Complete Scope. It's some of the best toothpaste in the world. And you'll see my partner's toothpaste, Andrea, she has Colgate Sensitive. And so it's for people with sensitive teeth. And I think it's so interesting because if you've ever recently been to the toothpaste aisle, and I hope you all have recently made a trip there, you'll walk down the toothpaste aisle and there will literally be dozens and dozens and dozens of different types of toothpaste. Like there's rarely any two toothpaste that look alike. They've got, toothpaste with charcoal, toothpaste that's whitening, gum replenishing, total last all day, different brands. And each of them has 5 different things that you have to deeply consider in terms of the quality of your gums and your teeth. And inevitably, we all grab at least one tube of toothpaste. And when you look at it, it has the unique set of qualities that most appeals to you, of all the qualities you can have. And in many ways, college is like a tube of toothpaste. You're out there looking at so many colleges, and at the end of the day, you pick the college that has unique and special aspects that appeal particularly to you. Now, I know the price tag between toothpaste and college is very different, but my goal today is to help you think about all of the different qualities that you can sort of put together so you can start to craft your college search and figure out, what your bucket list is. My little sister, when she went and searched for colleges, she tells me that when she finally set foot on the college campus that she would ultimately attend, she was like taking a tour and it was like a rainy, cloudy day. And as this group of 15 people sort of huddled between the residential hall and the student center, she was walking around and she looked up and the clouds like parted and this beam of light came down on her and no one else. And she says, I heard this noise and it was like, oh, she goes, that was it. I knew that was the school for me. Now, I don't think that's going to happen for everyone because it might be a condition or something. But for my sister, it was like this stroke of lightning. That was the college for her. And she ultimately attended. And while I hope that happens for every one of you, sometimes it doesn't happen. And so you have to go back and really take all these different things into consideration, figure out how much you love it, how much you don't love it. My brother did like an Excel spreadsheet and he had all the colleges listed on the left side. And he gave each college, a point value system. And it was the colleges with the highest total that he considered the most. He was very quantitative, but part of the challenge of starting off with a college search is you don't know what's important, what's not important, because you might not even know what's important to you until you start talking to us. So I'm going to give you my most simple hint for the 3 things that every school has that you could consider. Number 1, every school has an academic program or an academic environment. In other words, what are their majors? Do they have the major that you want? Do they offer the major the way in which you want to take advantage of it? Like psychology, at some schools, it's a social science. At some schools, it's in the sciences. And some schools might focus on developmental and cognitive, and some schools might focus on behavioral and counseling. But psychology means something sometimes very different at different schools. So does the school offer your major the way in which you want it? Is the classroom experience the way that you learn? So academics, figure out what you want for academics. Every school has a different flavor. Second, social environment. Is it a fun school? Is it a party school? Will you get along with the people? The type of activities that you know you love now, are they offered at that school? Or when they tell you about some of the stuff that they do for fun, do you perk up and say, whoa, I didn't know I wanted to do that. And now I know I absolutely have to have that at any school I go to. When you look around, when you go to a high school, when you go to a college visit, do you look around and say, oh, these are my people? I totally know these are going to be my friends for 4 years. So that's the second thing. What is the social environment for the school and what do you want out of it? Do all the students leave on the weekend? or do they stay in town? Are you the only one who's coming from out of state? The last one, this is the most difficult and it's the most intangible. This is, I call it ethos. You might call it spiritual environment. You might call it values. But you go to some schools and they have a way in which they live out their lives. And it might be, does this feel like a place where people have my back, where I feel taken care of? For my sister, it's that stroke of lightning, that gut that says it just feels right. For some people, it might be, is this school with a religious environment? And is that important to me or is it not important? Is this a place where I actually feel like they take into consideration the type of values and how people are important? For example, at Reed, we have something called the honor principle, which is what governs most of our policies. It's the fact that you have to take in consideration how your words and actions impact other people. It's how it applies in testing. It applies to how you treat each other in the residential halls. But that's a big part of our values. So that X factor at every school, what is it? And do they offer it in a way that you appreciate it? So those three things I would invite you to think about as you go to school. It makes it really simple. What they offer in these three buckets, and do they offer it in a way that I want to take advantage of it? How's that sound? That's the best advice I've got. That's the heavy hitting advice, particularly if you're starting. And keep a list, and it's going to help you out a ton. All right, let's go back to my toothpaste. So let's get context. There's a reason why this college thing is complicated. And part of it is because there are a lot of different schools. You've probably heard some places call themselves colleges. Some places call themselves universities. There is a technical difference. Colleges are generally places that offer a 4-year degree, but they don't have graduate programs. Like they might not have a medical school, or they might not have a law program. They might not offer masters and doctorates. They're primarily undergraduate institutions where you get your Bachelors of Arts or Bachelors of Science. About 20% fall into that category. And then places that offer doctorates, masters, specialized education, those tend to be universities. That's about 2/3 of the schools. An associate degree, those are usually like community or junior colleges that offer 2-year degrees. They aren't better or worse. A BA is not better than a BS. They're just different. But these are classifications, and that's why you'll hear college when you're talking about a school that offers a 4-year degree versus a university for a school that offers education beyond 4 years. It's not more prestigious, it's just a different title. And there's almost 5,000 colleges in the US. And when you're like, okay, I got to figure this out, I'm going to break it down for you. Of those almost 5,000 schools, you've got about 1,500 2-year colleges. Those associate degree schools are junior colleges, and about 2,800 4-year colleges. And that means 4 years or higher. And so let's sort of like chase down where Reed fits in among all of these. And so among these 2,800 4-year colleges, about 2,700 are research professional colleges. But if you're thinking about a liberal arts education, which I'm sure you all hear about a lot, there's only about 100 liberal arts schools in the United States. So if that has been a priority for you, suddenly your list has gotten much smaller and much more manageable really quickly, right? And these liberal arts colleges, I'll talk a little bit about what colleges mean when they call themselves liberal arts colleges in a bit. Now, of those 99 liberal arts colleges, there's 61 of them that are highly residential. That means more than half the students live on campus. And they're small, and small schools, I'll tell you, there's a classification for what's big and small. And of those 61 small ones, 55 are considered selective. Now, selective college is basically anyone that has an acceptance rate that's lower than 50%. And then of those selective colleges, there's places like Oberlin, Middlebury, Occidental, but there is only one Reed. So part of the landscape for colleges, you will consider places that are research universities, like the flagship university that's in your state. And you're also going to pick some small places. But you'll notice that those schools that fall among the 99 liberal arts colleges are often describing themselves in similar ways. You'll get to know your professor. You'll have small classroom size. Your goal in this process is to move beyond some of those generic expressions and to find out really what the personality is like. What are the things they offer that don't sound like every other school that has that same moniker? All right, now that I think we have most people here, just a reminder, if you do have questions, always feel free to chat them out. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat one. Grace gave me the great analogy like a gamer, which tells me what Grace is doing during the free time. But if you have any questions, chat them out or raise your hand and I can call on you too. Right. So I tried to emphasize this earlier. When you're looking at different schools, it's not necessarily a difference of quality. It's just a difference of philosophy. The way in which schools provide their education, they just kind of do it in a different way. They might have a different approach. They might focus on the way in which you learn in a different way. And once you get a good feeling of that, it helps you figure out if it's a place where you're going to thrive. And so I'm trying to help us move away from this idea that things are better or worse, simply that they're different. And you're trying to find out what flavor of different you want in particular. So let's talk a little bit about geography. There's basically a general distinction when you think about colleges that are in cities, colleges that aren't cities. It's a fairly common sort of divide. They both bring different values. So urban campuses like Reed, campus life extends beyond the campus. I went to a school that was in a small town of maybe about, maybe 11,000 people. So they had to make sure every weekend they planned a lot of activities or we would be really bored. And other colleges that are actually in more rural or more urban areas, students might spill out into the city, and take advantage of events that happen in town in addition to events that happen on campus. That's not to say campuses don't plan fun things, but that's to say that students don't only rely on what happens on a campus in order to find entertainment. Their research opportunities might be a bit different. If you're in an urban area, you might find yourself at a local business or hospital doing an internship, whereas rural places, it might be planned. So you might do a term in a specific location in order to get those similar opportunities. And so those are a few differences with each one. Where does Reed fall? The Portland Metro is about 2.5 million. So it's a pretty good sized town. The college is in Portland proper. So we're only 15 minutes from downtown. And on campus, we have 116 acres. So it's this really green place right in the middle of the city. And Portland has more food carts per capita than any other city in the world. And I've been fact checked on that. And so that is really a thing. It's kind of a cool place. There's a canyon that goes right through the middle of campus. So it feels like a natural green area and you're right on the bus stop. We've got a pipe bike co-op in town. So it's really easy to make use of the area. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I chatted about size. When schools say they're small, what they mean is they're less than 1,000. Or I'm sorry, when they're very small, they're less than 1,000. Places that are small are between 1,000 and 3,000. So yeah, you can be like 3,000 students and still be considered a small school. Medium, 3,000 to 10,000, and large, 10,000 and up. So this is the breakdown of four-year colleges and what they mean when they say size. So let's talk a little bit about campus size. So smaller places, like Reed, one of the things we talk about is community and the fact that you'll get to know your friends. And yes, that does sound incredibly cliche. But one of the things I always tell people that a college campus is different from high school. You're in your hallways, you see everyone all the time. Because we're spread over 119 acres, because you're living in different rest halls, you can meet a new person every day. You do have new experiences. It's not just the same 5 people over and over. And that's one of the things that's harder to conceptualize, particularly having been in a high school community where things are in a much smaller and much more dense place. The biggest difference, I think, in terms of academic environment is at a smaller school, you'll tend to be involved, let's say in research, in more parts of the research because it's not 15 people and each one is being assigned one portion of the research. You're often working directly with the professor on larger segments. I spoke with one of our students this morning who published who's publishing a paper with her and her professor. And this is something that she did over the course of the summer. And so while you can do these participation-based classes, those relationships and actually getting a little bit more deep within the projects you have is something that smaller schools talk about. Whereas larger schools really talk about lecture-based classes, having resources, having grants, resources, and really robust research facilities. The biggest thing that I want to sort of name is classroom experience. Yes, our average classroom size is roughly, I think about, what is it, 11, 12, Grace?
I think it's 15.
15? Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then, you know, larger schools are doing a lot of stuff to make sure classes feel smaller. So you might be in a large lecture room, but maybe you're at tables with 8 people. And so you have little pods in this larger room to emulate a smaller experience in some of those discussion courses. So larger schools are really working on helping making this learning experience feel more personalized. Reed, we've got about 1,500 students, 9-to-1 teacher ratio, no adjunct faculty, 43 majors, and the average classroom size, like Grace said, was 15. I have 17 here, but I trust Grace more than what I've shared here.
Usually caveat of 15 to 17. So there you go.
There we go. I'm going to talk about ranges from here on out. So I'm going to pause and see if y'all have any questions about any of this stuff, about the landscape. So I'm going to cover a few things. I'm going to talk about liberal arts, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Reed in particular. So I sort of kick this down the road. You know, what does liberal arts mean? And in ancient Greek, it was what you did to become a moral person. So arts and skills and sciences that made one an effective and moral citizen. And it intrinsically covered a lot of area. And now when schools say liberal arts, what they're talking about is traditional disciplines over professional tracks. So in other words, you don't just come here to become a, let's just say an engineer. You come here because you want to learn math and science, and you also are interested in literature. And yes, you can still develop a path that leads you to engineering. Another way to say this is that folks, I talk about this giving people upward mobility and versatility. If you come to Reed and you're interested in the sciences, you'll also learn other things, which makes you a better scientist. It makes you a better leader. It makes you, positions you to better communicate with people who you're working with who may not have a scientific background. And that type of versatility or academic curiosity makes liberal arts schools a really good fit for students. One of the things that we offer, that we do here at Reed, is something that's called Humanities 110. And this is the first course that all of our students participate in right when they arrive. You're all in the same class. It is a combination of lectures with the entire first year class that breaks out into what we call conferences, which tend to have 11, I'll say 8 to 13 people in each conference, where you talk about what you've learned in these lecture halls in a smaller, more intimate group. This is a course that every Reed student has taken for as long as the college exists. And your first year is broken up into segments. And in your first semester, you're covering the ancient Mediterranean, and then you're moving to Athens. But it is an exploration of the world through art, through literature, through science, through philosophy. It's one of the most interesting courses we have, and it's a shared experience that you'll have with all of the first year students. Second semester even gets more interesting. They focus on Mexico City, in particular Aztec culture, Spanish culture, Mexican culture. And then it moves to Harlem, back during the Harlem Renaissance. So this is my this is my favorite part of the presentation. Let's see. And good question we have. What you'll find is of those 1,500 students, the vast majority do live on campus. And a typical year that's not sort of hampered by COVID, anywhere from 70 to 80% of our students live on campus. We guarantee the housing for our first year students and our sophomore students, and the housing is exceptional. And then after that, if some students may live off campus, we know that prices in urban areas is going up. And so that's why we make sure that there's offerings for folks to live on campus. But yeah, your friends are here. And if they're not here, they're within a stone's throw of campus. So everyone will be around. The other neat thing is students travel further to come to Reed than any other college, which is to say that you will meet people from New York, from Florida, from Texas, just as likely as you are to meet someone from Oregon. In fact, about 8% of our students come from Oregon. Everyone else comes from almost every other state. And if you start to listen to schools, that is extremely rare. It is a nationally represented college where you're going to meet people from all over the country. Most of the students are, most students don't bring their bikes to campus. It's not a city that needs a whole lot, or cars to campus. It's not a city that really needs that. Bikes are common. Some students do bring their cars to campus. There's not a limit to whether or not you can bring your car on campus. But if folks do, I often find that they might bring it one year and then just not bring it the next. So public transportation, biking, scooters, you name it. It's one of the most common ways to get around. Portland's the most biker-friendly city, you know, right above Minneapolis. And so really easy for you to engage in town and not have to really work to do it. And you know what, I realized that I don't have a list of majors on here. So Grace, can you chat out a link of majors and maybe the one on the admissions site so people can see how they can plug into more information about programs. But we do have an anthropology major. We do have representation from the anthropology department in humanities and in Hum 110. But that is certainly one of the programs that we cover here. So I started off by talking about toothpaste. And one of the things I said about toothpaste is that it has these unique qualities that appeal most to you. So on this final part of my presentation, I'm going to talk about 7 unique things to read. And what I want you to do is walk away with knowing that here are a few items that Reed has that either no one or very few other schools have, because I think it helps you understand how we are different and sets us apart. And ideally, that'll lock in your memory some of the values that we have as an institution. And the first thing I'll share is that we don't participate in rankings. So US News and World Report, Washington Post, any of those rankings. I actually got a reminder today that I didn't fill out my rankings brochure for US News and World Report and give them my opinion of what the top colleges in the country are, because I'm not going to do it. And we don't do rankings not because we think they're inherently bad, but we think they're inherently challenging for the industry. We think that it means that all schools are sort of looking for the same thing. And I think colleges are as diverse as you are, which means that we really look for values for you finding a place where you feel like you can be for 4 years. And what's important to you may not be the same thing that's important to US News and World Report, or the proportions may not be the same. Y'all will get an email about a session we call Navigating Selective College Admission, where I talk about this for maybe like 20 minutes and we do a little game at the beginning. So if you want to learn more about that, feel free to jump in. And while some schools are penalized for not participating, Reed has remained on the top 100 list since day one. But that's a value of ours. Another thing is the liberal arts education. And I sort of mentioned that, but we're one of the schools who has remained true to its roots of the liberal arts and making sure that students can come here and have a lot of versatility in how they're educated. And most of that, I think, really comes through in our Hum 110, which is a really unique approach to interdisciplinary learning. Interdisciplinary means pulling from different disciplines. Quirky. Quirky is, how many people have ever heard Reed referred to as quirky? None of you? One of you, two? Okay. The fact that there's few hands means we're doing good work. All right. Thank you. So Daja's so cute. Gabriella, yes, yes. Yeah, it comes up, right? And so quirky in and of itself is not an inherently bad thing, or being a quirky person is not an inherently bad thing. But one of the things that we know is that when we're going out and saying we're quirky, sometimes students have to feel like they have to manufacture some type of quirk in their application to feel like they're a good fit. And that is not at all necessary. What is most important to us is that we have students who are excited about learning. This is an intellectual college. If you're a person who's ever you've hung around after class and you walk up to your teacher and you say, you know what, you mentioned this in class today or the other day. Since then, I've been thinking about it and I have some questions. How does this fit? Or maybe if someone said something in class and you went home and you like Googled it and you looked into it a little bit more, or maybe it connected to a completely different class you've had. If you've had that sort of curiosity, that love of learning that comes up, you are probably a really good fit for Reed. And sometimes really curiously bright students are quirky, and sometimes they're perfectly boring, and sometimes they're not. Quirky is a byproduct. It is not the goal. And so our students here might be perfectly quirky, and they might be perfectly not quirky. One thing I tell people is if you look at the cafeteria table in our cafeteria, the folks who sit at that table might not have sat together in high school or might not have been in the same group. And I think that is a beautiful thing here, because what brings them together is their love of learning. Half of our students are varsity athletes. Half of our students are musicians. And many of our students are artists. If you love learning, this could be a really good place for you. Don't feel like you got to be quirky. All right, I'm going to share more. So what's next? Paideia question. So for our application, it used to say something like, why do you want to go to Reed? And if you knew Reed or had family that came here, had visited campus, we kind of liked your answer. But if you hadn't been to Reed or looked up the website to learn more about the college, we'd be like, oh, you got that from the website. That's terrible. It's not terrible. That's just the way that you were trying to connect with us. And what we realized about the application process was that we got excited when you got excited. So when people would share either ideas or projects they worked on and really kind of say like, you know, I remember this one student talking about this time he's walking down the street and he walked by this place where this guy was doing projects with welding and leather. And he said, that is so cool. And he sort of sat in the door. A few months later, he's doing an apprenticeship with this person. Just, it was so intriguing to him. And then he walked in, and that's something he did for a whole year. And the way that he described that showed that he had this real passion. And so now we ask this question that goes something like this. During 10 days at Reed, during Paideia, folks on campus can teach about an area of interest that they're really excited about, the community members. What would you teach? And the awesome part about that is whether or not you've been to Reed, whether or not you know Reed, whether or not you know people who know Reed, you can share something that you're excited about. You can share an area of passion and enthusiasm. And we think that no matter who you are, what walk of life you're from, that helps us understand if this passion makes you a good fit for Reed. That's a question anyone can answer without any sort of pre-context. And I think that's a really cool way for us to learn more about you without any biases or requirements. So no adjunct professors. What are adjuncts? I mentioned it earlier and I kind of went through that slide really quickly. So let me ask you all this. Does anybody know what adjunct faculty are? If you raise your hand, I'm going to call on you. All right, we've got two folks at the bottom. Dakota, why don't you tell us what an adjunct is? See you, Clarissa.
I don't know if anyone can hear me, but essentially a visiting professor that's not meant to stay there for a terribly long amount of time.
Well done. That is the most succinct and accurate answer I've heard in a long time. It's a visiting professor, someone who comes in and, and in some cases, they're working at several colleges. In some cases, they might have a full-time job and sort of teaching on the side. At any given institution, colleges will normally have anywhere from 10 to 40% of their faculty be adjunct faculty. And I'm probably hedging this and being a little bit conservative. Reed is no adjunct faculty. Everyone here is a full-time professor, which means that they're here for office hours. They're here to help you, to answer you. They're teaching a full load of classes. You're going to see them around on campus. This is all they do. And when you think about how unique this is, I actually don't know of one other college that has no adjunct faculty. This is the only place I know that has no adjunct faculty. So people sort of wonder why, Reed is unique. I think one of the things it does for us, and I'll show you this slide, because this connects with something else. One of the things is PhD production. Take a look at this. This is how schools rank per capita for their production for PhD. So for every 100 students, how many PhDs do we produce in the life sciences, physical sciences, social sciences, humanities? Reed is second, third, second. If we broke this down for majors, whether it's English, biology, chemistry, or anthropology, linguistics, you're going to find that Reed is a national leader in producing leaders in their educational field. And I think this is largely because the folks who are teaching you have uninterrupted time to make sure you're the most important things they are doing. This is the secret sauce. This is what people talk about when they say that Reed is a good school. If you do well here, you will do well anywhere. If you do well here, you will do well anywhere. So one thing I skipped over is the paper conference, and I think the paper conference is really cool. During like Q110, you'll write a paper, and this happens in other classes, and you'll take the paper and you'll sit down with your professor for about an hour, and you will go through your paper and just talk about it. And your faculty member, your professor will be like, oh, this is great, but you kind of missed this. You talked about this in class, that was cool. Or tell me what you're trying to do here. I love that. I want more of it. You're going back and forth talking about what you were trying to do and if it was effective or not. And you leave that hour-long conference more excited to rewrite that paper and work on that paper than when you first arrived. This is something that students do on a regular basis, but I think it's a small example of what Reed is overall. This is a place where you're going to have these really exciting experiences and those connections with your faculty. That's going to be the same thing that happens in the research lab, when you're hanging out after class, when you don't see them for a semester and you come back and say, hey, I'm thinking about my major in a different way. What should I do? You're going to have those conversations with your faculty all the time. So that's 7 things, but I have an 8th one. And the 8th one is community members. You remember when I talked about the honor principle, wanting folks here who are going to think about how their actions impact other people? Reed is a place that really wants folks who build community. And that means making this college experience as much of a home for your classmates as it is for you. I told someone this morning, this is an office, a workplace, where we think about how our actions impact everyone. And so taking patience to make sure that we're treating people with care and thoughtfulness, that's a big part of our values. This is a place where you're not going to be competitive and pull other students down to be successful. This is a place where people are going to be looking out for you, making sure that they have your back and that you're doing as well as they feel like you could do. What questions do you have? If you have no questions, that means I was incredibly thorough. So that's my presentation. And Grace did this presentation before I did. So that's Grace's address. But you can reach me at admission@Trulove, TRULOVE @reed.edu. let's see. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the daily and weekly schedule. So in a given week, most colleges are like this. You'll have an hour-long class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, an hour-and-a-half class on Tuesday or Thursday. There are some exceptions, but you typically have about 4 classes in a semester. And so depending on how you'll schedule those, you'll do class, you'll do some homework. The other ways that folks are active on campus is through student activities. Also presenting things in the residential halls. So we have folks that are in charge of creating residential life experiences for other students, leadership programming, affinity groups, folks that have a particular quality in common and they're spending time with each other. Students also work. So we have probably 50 students that work in the admission office. If you're hanging out with us this year, you're definitely going to meet with them in an interview or in one of these student panels. You might work in the library or work in the cafeteria. Students also are working closely with faculty. Some of them are doing recycling projects. Some of them, if you're environmental studies, you're going off into the different environmental regions of Oregon to do exploration. The daily schedule is as diverse as our student body, which is fairly diverse. We offer health insurance. And so some of you will stay in your parents' insurance. When you come to college, federal regulations have changed. Now you can stay on parent insurance until you're 25. And some of you will move and decide to take REIT insurance. And it's really a family decision. There's no right or wrong way to do this. But in addition to that, we also have an HCC, a healthcare center on campus. And so, you know, if you have any owies that you need to have checked out, you could go there. If you want to talk to someone about any challenges you're having, this is a really good place to go. And so it's right on the edge of campus, but it's on campus. And if you need anything that's more serious, they have a really good referral service. Other things that you'll be engaged on campus is studying in different countries. And so we've got programs in almost 100 different countries. Some of them last a semester, some last for a year. The one thing I tell folks is if you're thinking about doing study abroad or studying in another country, these are conversations that are really great to have right away. And so talk to your advisor, you know, this is actually true for any school. If you're thinking about studying abroad, talk to folks right away, and they're going to tell you what their cadence is. And the timing that you do that is going to be different for different schools. If you looked at our majors, you see hyphenated majors. Those are programs where you're picking up information from 2 departments. Those are the interdisciplinaries. Some schools call them multidisciplinary programs, but they're essentially for students who like, there's just a lot of crossover between math and computer science, for instance. And so they've made a course schedule that allows you to do both of those without having to take one full major and another full major, but combining them to make indeed one program rather than 2 different programs. Most of Reed students will major in one thing. You'll talk to your advisor. You might say, oh, I have these different interests. And they'll say the way that you do that interest is by navigating it through these classes, through these courses, or through an interdisciplinary, or also now minors. Regarding student with parent financial support, will have advantage over a student who pays to college independently. If I understand your question correctly, so we certainly have students who are independent and are in charge of sort of covering their own finances. I wouldn't say that your advantage is better or worse. We are what we call a need-sensitive process, but the way that we apply that is to make sure they have resources for every student that we've admitted. Reed fulfills 100% of your demonstrated need. We don't do this thing called gapping. So your FAFSA and profile, these are financial aid forms that determine your expected family contribution, how much your family can afford to pay. And then if that's 10,000 and Reed costs, more than that, that's going to be the size of the financial aid package you get from us. We fulfill 100% of your demonstrated needs. So if you need 70,000 from us, we're going to give you 70,000. Gapping means if you need 70,000, I'm going to give you 40,000. No, we'll give you everything we need. We have some of the best financial aid in the country. We have almost zero for default rates because we don't give out a lot of loans. And in terms of people being able to do it financially, while Reed might have a bigger price tag, it is affordable for every student. We do a really good job of that. And what I tell people is never count out of school because of a price tag. You never know how much a school costs until you get your financial aid. Okay. That's what's hard about colleges is that you have to get to that spot to figure out how much you're going to pay out. But that's also why there's so much anxiety about prices when it goes to college. So if you love a place and you see the price tag and you want to run away, no, apply, go through your steps, wait till you get your financial aid. That's when you decide if it's affordable or not. So please make sure you do that. You're welcome. Does on-campus housing happen after 2 years? So when you pay for school, there's something called comprehensive fee. That's the price of everything. So often you hear sort of casually people say tuition. Tuition is just how much you're paying to do the classes, but then there's also room, how much you're paying to live on campus, and board. That's food. So tuition, room, and board, all of that is usually called, and plus a few fees. So like maybe for student activities, there's fees. That's called your comprehensive fee. That's what we give you financial aid for, is comprehensive cost, the cost of everything. We take into consideration the fact that you might fly here and help you get money for that. The fact that you're going to pay for books, we give financial aid for that. So we look at everything. And you do have to pay for housing and board every year on campus, but that's also factored in to your financial aid. Students have a lot of freedom to explore majors, but here's the deal. You want to declare your major on time. So that conversation with your advisor right away is, me, I was interested in psychology, communications, and theater. And I had a double major. That was possible at my school, but I talked about it right away because I didn't want to miss the window, so I could graduate on time. And what our advisors say is, tell me right away, I can keep your schedule open for a very long time, making sure that you get these classes to make sure you will complete on time. And so as long as you're really clear with your advisor about what you're thinking about, you will have flexibility. And then when you get to the point where they say, okay, now we have to decide, what do we need to do to help you decide? Because after the semester, you've got to either choose one path or the other or both. We'll help you do that. Outdoor resources are abundant. You're in Oregon, you're an hour and a half away from the ocean, you're an hour and a half from the mountains. Reed has a ski lodge. There's all these different temperate zones, from deserts to forests to everything is here in Oregon. It's beautiful. So if you're looking for biking, hiking, waterfalls, fishing, anything you want to do, you could do it here. It's a mecca. And then it's such a temperate zone. You can do this year round. Our dorms go from singles all the way up to quads, all the way up to apartments. You can live in a variety of areas. We have language houses. So you can live in a house or you can live in a traditional residential hall. And the rooms are generously sized. I think there's over 20 places to live, styles to live on campus. Is that right, Grace?
I could offer a range. No, there's definitely a lot of different styles. I'd say whatever you're looking for, there's probably a couple rooms around here, unless you really want to be 5 people stacked on top of each other. We definitely don't do that.
I think that's the one we'll miss. So do we provide merit scholarship? We provide need-based financial aid. And so we do have some merit awards that are applied to help reduce some of your loan indebtedness. But for all intents and purposes, everything you receive for us is within your need analysis. And then if you have external financial aid, that's not money that's going to come away from us. The first thing we do with that is if you have any self-help. Self-help is like, if you have loans, we're going to reduce your loans so you don't have to take out loans. Student work, we're going to take that away so you don't have to work while you're on campus. And so we do this in a really equitable way that goes towards you and not the institution for any financial support that you get, something we do really, really well. Good questions. I see why you do that, Grace. I did feel like a gamer. Playing Call of Duty and answering questions. The food is I was going to say the food is great, but I try not to just say that. So you'll hear a lot of folks say my food is from Bon Appetit. Bon Appetit is a really popular food service at colleges because they do things like try to make as much of their food local, try to make it on scratch, on site, try to make it appetizing and appealing. Bon Appetit has sort of taken food to the next level on college campuses. So when you see colleges sort of talking about this, some of them will have their own service. We use Bon Appetit. I think our students like it. Because of the different diet styles, there's a wide variety of diets will compensate. And you can meet with Bon Appetit and talk about your diet restrictions, and they'll make sure that they accommodate that. I think it's one of the best facilities for gamers on campus. I'm not aware. I think maybe they might have a lot of those chairs in the basement that the gamers sit on, but I'm not 100% sure. We are test blind for next year, which is the next step past test optional. And so that means ACT and SAT is not required for admission. We do still do a deep evaluation. We're in the second year of a 2-year pilot. And so that will be the case for all of you. Oddly enough, we still ask that you submit your scores. We won't look at them, but we need to make sure that we're doing this right. And so at the end of the year, once everyone is in, we're going to bust that open and take a look at it. I know students fairly have anxiety about that, so we're going to go back and ask people to get that information. But no, we're test blind, and so we know that you all have not had a chance to access tests as you would have in a normal environment. And to be equitable, we feel like it's fair just to say those are not required at all, and this will be the second year. Is there a leftist scene on campus? I think there's probably a leftist scene on most campuses. We've gotten to a place where people sort of categorize campuses as liberal or not liberal, and it's just way more diverse than that. We're bringing in a class of 400 to 500 students. Those students are not always of one type. And so one of the things we really focus on is diversity in our application pool, diversity in our practices. So you will meet people from different walks of life. To be monolithic is to create an enduring environment where learning doesn't really happen all that much. And so that's a really important value for us in the admission office to make sure that this is inclusive in terms of culture, but also in terms of the way people think. COVID precautions, we have students taking COVID tests twice a week on campus. Every student has had singles this year. We've been a hybrid system, but most students have been on campus. We have 3 tents that are outside, so people have taken classes outside in open air in these tents that have been warm during the winter. We've added an app so you can pick up food service, so you can order online what you want from Bon Appetit, go there, pick it up, and walk to your dorm. We offer outside seating for students. We've had less than 40 cases this year on campus. We've done a phenomenal job. Half those people were not even students. They may have been, someone who worked on campus and may have gotten it off campus. Oregon has had one of the lowest incidents of COVID in the United States. They're in the bottom 10%. We've killed it. We've just done an exceptional job of keeping people safe, hands down. And we'll continue our testing policies next year. And so when you're tested twice a week, it's a way to know that everyone's doing all right. Okay, there are 4 minutes left. And so I first want to say that your questions are awesome. That you've done a really good job of covering so much ground. And we're going to do this. We offer a lot of programming like this, where we're not just talking about read, but we're talking about how you might write your best essay, where we fit in context, how you might navigate financial aid. And if you look on our visit page, there's different sort of levels. And level 1 is people who are just starting in financial aid. Next is intermediate. The next is really specifically read. And we do that for a lot of different areas. So you can all kind of decide where you are and find the session for you, where you think you need, where you'll get the most value. And we're going to offer these online and in person. And so, yeah, if this was helpful today, come back and learn more. I promise you, we make a good job of making sure that you walk away with information you didn't have when you first started. All right. So good to see you all. Thanks for coming. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you around soon. We'll be in touch. Bye.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're very
Bye.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Bye. You're welcome.